Ooh, a sudden hush. That's brilliant. You've all hushed at the right moment. That was really good timing. Well, it's 7 o'clock, and it's really nice to see you all here. Before we begin, I want to say a few words about the fundraising aspect of this evening. The Guild was founded in 1888, and it's occupied this site, a listed building, continuously since it acquired the property in 1912. In 1914, the then membership funded the addition of the hall in which we're now assembled. And it's a meeting hall that's been used continuously since that date. The hall itself was renovated at the Guild's expense in 2011, but key aspects of this building have been a rumbling issue for the Guild for some time, as the expectations of its clientele and hirers and partner organizations, as well as the legislation that governs hire premises, have changed over the years. The hall itself was renovated at the Guild's expense in 2011, but key aspects of this building have been a rumbling issue for the Guild for some time, as the expectations of its clientele and hirers and partner organizations, as well as the legislation that governs hire premises, have changed over the years. So I'll tell you a bit more about the Art Workers Guild specifically in a minute, but this part of this evening is really to reinforce to you the idea that refurbishment for this organization is a really live issue. Because as well as the Guild, many other kindred organizations use this premises, and groups and societies come and meet using the facilities here on a regular basis. Now, their continuing to do so is contingent upon the implementation of the development plans that the Guild is putting together at this moment. This also impacts the Guild's attractiveness as a venue for future organizations, and it remains a key part of the Guild's strategy to maintain craftsmanship at the heart of the organization well into the next century, as well as for the last one. And it's very important also for maintaining the Guild's revenue streams. So you see there's an important aspect of, multi-layered aspect to this evening, which is about raising revenue for the Guild. So I urge you to give as generously as you feel able in the bowl on the table there. And I noticed several of you, and many of you have done so already, so thank you very much. But that's why Richard and I are here this evening. So anyway, welcome one and all to this, the only performance of an odd couple in London in 2014. And we really are an odd couple. Richard will attest to this in a moment. And I think I need to say no more about that. You've only got to look at us. Now, it is a real pleasure for me to see you all here. Many of your faces I recognize. And that's not surprising, because I've spent some weeks cajoling and bending arms and begging and emailing and generally trying to get as many of your bums on these seats as possible. So it's a great pleasure to see you here, and I'm sure I speak for Richard in that as well. Equally, for Richard and I, it is a very great privilege to be standing and sitting here before you now, in this really rather august hall. It occurs to me that many of you will not necessarily know much about the Art Workers Guild. And it's true that the Guild is not an organization that is known for blowing its own trumpet. It has many other, much more attractive virtues. So perhaps a few words about the Guild would be a good place to start. Around you, on the walls of this hall, you will see the faces of many of the past masters of the Guild. All of them were practitioners really quite scarily eminent in their own fields. So it's with no small amount of trepidation that I stand here about to speak under their withering and often rather scornful-looking gaze. Many of them, I suspect, and I'm sure you'd agree from looking at them, would not suffer fools gladly. And I find myself wondering if they'll see a couple of fools perform before them here this evening. And I suspect more than one of them will think that we are. But our contention is that foolishness, contrary to academic convention, is by no means a condition that is inconsistent with cogent thought. It can often be an asset. The fool can whisper wise heresies to the king that will not be countenanced in any other voice. Richard and I, in our lengthy 2012 correspondence, manhandled truths, ideas, states of being that many of these, perhaps each and every one of these venerable individuals would recognize and will have wrestled with for themselves. And I respectfully suggest that each of you will find some common purpose with us this evening in the issues that we grapple with before you. So within our often absurd wordplay and antic behavior lie, only thinly veiled, matters of great import to anyone wishing to lead and tread the creative path in this world. Basically, to lead a thoughtful and engaged life. Matters of enduring relevance, even in our society of commercial excess. A society in many ways of white noise. A society in many ways that the individuals pictured here with us would find utterly alien. Now, Richard and I are believers in certain inalienable truths about the essential needs and hungers of the human spirit. So it's in that light that we offer this talk to our honourable forebears, pictured here with us, and as well as to your good selves. Now, that both did and didn't say very much about the Art Workers Guild. A great many disciplines are brought together under the Guild's broad umbrella. But disparate though they may be in material, in technique, or in methodology, the connecting tissue between them, and I love connecting tissue, is that they each value what we may term the intelligence of the human hand. That is to say, the absolute necessity for and requirement of the human hand's sensitive and skillful deployment in the creation of objects, artifacts, artworks, interiors, buildings that essentially enhance and celebrate the human spirit and the very stuff of art. Now, I think William Morris himself would approve of that sentiment. And he peers down with his bronze and all-seeing eyes from the display niche above my head. That's the man right there. He would certainly approve of that, but he might have a spot of bother with the buffoonery with which Richard and I present that message to you. However, William, you have actually been the recipient of a great volume of Richard's letters as yet unpublished. I'll let that hang. And they are letters in which Richard discusses a plethora of subjects, not least the diminutive proportions of his own manhood.
Utterly humiliating.
And the prevalence today of Viagra-toting email spam. So perhaps I needn't be too concerned about what William thinks, because William knows all about Richard. Perhaps it is you, my friends, you, who need to be worried. So I'll bring this rather verbose introduction to a close with a few personal thoughts about words. I know what we're up against. But Richard and I have no glossy images to accompany our performance this evening, no touch-screen displays, no glitzy distractions, no trendy graphics or technological enhancements to provide you with a refuge from the unrelenting and unforgiving barrage of words that we're about to assail you with. You are rabbits in our headlights. Words are our medium, and I don't just mean Richard and I as we're stood before you in this rather august and rarefied environment. Human beings have this extraordinary, rare capacity to make concrete and legible the inner workings of our minds. Words are what sets us apart as a species. We treat them with disdain at our peril. Words are our ultimate playground. They are conduits of our every desire, dream, mystery, design. They constitute the very measure of us as beings. But they're more remarkable either than this. Somehow, in the poetry of Carl Sagan, on this mote of dust captured in a beam of light that we call Earth, floating adjacent to a nondescript star towards the edge of one of the spiral arms of a really rather ordinary galaxy. A dowdy cousin of many, many, many millions more such galaxies, infinitely more dazzling, across the countless light years of the cosmos, here, and as far as we know, only here, an astonishingly unlikely act of biological serendipity took place. It places an amazing responsibility upon us as beings. The apparatus, the responsibility, the act, the choice, the voice with which to express the fact that we are the universe looking back at itself. Words are the medium through which we dare to dream. I think you'd agree with that, Richard. They're the very organs through which we structure and articulate the noblest of human ambitions and ideas. Science, art, those multifarious, refined, and extraordinary modes of being and behavior that we describe as culture. This is the spirit that I invite you to endure our mini tsunami of words this evening. Let it wash over you. So now I'm going to hand you to my esteemed friend and colleague, Richard Jacobs, who will explain the background and specifics of our performance for you this evening. And he'll introduce the first of several issues that we're going to lay before you and debate. Over to you, Richard.
Thank you. In 40 years in the classroom, I would usually initiate that ceremony, ritual of schooling, that habit-forming orientation of robots walking aimlessly from cubicle to receive a professional treatment. And my way of attempting to change that would be, I would take off my shoes and maybe scratch my ass and indicate that what I wanted was an authentic human encounter. Which is the difference, of course, between schooling and education. Now, we are indeed an odd couple. I must somehow prove to you, it is a matter of pride, that I am profoundly more odd than Gareth. I am a retired university professor. I was an institutional renegade, a generalist and interdisciplinarian, and that hotbed of specialists in an isolated fragment, isolated fragment of human knowledge. I was seeking patterns of meaning. They were providing. I also sponsored and activated a liberation pedagogy of student empowerment, where students were allowed to make their own meaning, while my colleagues were enforcing regimes of the memorization of inert information for exam purposes. I am a collector of pottery, a writer, always a maverick, self-exiled to Britain many years ago, when I was active in the American Civil Rights Movement and the anti-Vietnam War movement, the first of my many visits over the years to Britain. I have managed to nurture and sustain a lifelong preference for alienation and angst over the superficial pleasures of happiness and dumb contentment. In contrast, Gareth is a most pleasant fellow. I don't hold it against him, he can't help it. To give him his proper due, he can be a most intense chap, activating all his notable talents and great energy in his unending pursuit of aesthetic achievement in the act of making. Never satisfied or at ease, always pushing himself in his somewhat violent and abusive treatment of that poor mound of clay situated in front of him.
About sums it up.
My wife, Judy, and I, in 35 years, have collected over 1,400 ceramic artifacts, many directly acquired from our travels to many parts of the world. We had, in fact, built a pottery gallery addition to our home to house them. I am the curator of these objects, composing their placement in an eclectic community of indigenous, antique, and contemporary ceramics. I assume that many of you, if not most of you, are makers in some form or fashion. Well, I import these artifacts into my home and domesticate them in a new environment, providing my own personal context by redefining their meaning in terms of my own needs and prejudices. I want to testify here and now about my great fondness for Gareth's work. Actually, Gareth insisted on this particular insertion. I had no choice. I do find Gareth's work beautiful and meaningful. I can truthfully assert that it has enriched my daily experience by having his work in my home. I have permitted his rude and undisciplined ceramic masterpieces
Undisciplined?
into my pottery gallery to commingle with considerably more restrained and respectable ceramic vessels. I must confess, and this does not come easy, that Gareth is more odd than I in his aesthetic radicalism in contrast to my more conventional orientation. How did this odd couple relationship come about? This platonic marriage of two completely unsuited partners. I want to insist that whatever malicious rumors are being spread, that this is strictly a platonic relationship. Will this relationship possibly last beyond this evening if that long? I am going to hector him throughout this performance. He will somehow attempt to defend himself, but I will show him no mercy. I know that he has planted many friends and admirers in this audience, and I know which side you're going to be on. It's going to be one very old and grumpy yank against the whole lot of you. But this can only confirm and add to the total misery that has been my due in life. Gareth delivered a lecture on fire at the SOFA Chicago Expo in 2011. I read the text of that lecture and decided to write him one of my super duper letters that I usually write to dead people. Maybe I should have stayed with So most of my writings over the last 10 years have been to dead people. I generally prefer them to live people. Possibly by the end of this evening, I could be persuaded to slightly modify that position. Gareth has proved the exception. I find most live people a real pain in the ass. Gareth, even despite the fact he's very much alive, and I have forgiven him for that, in fact have developed a friendly tolerance of his presence. As a writer, I wrote a volume of letters to a California potter, Krista Assad, which was published in 2007 in the book Searching for Beauty, Letters from a Collector to a Studio Potter. However, most of my mentors and muses over the years are deceased. Among others, I wrote 2 volumes of letters to Walter Benjamin, the German Jewish critic of the 1920s and 30s, who, in attempting to escape the Nazi Gestapo, fled to a border town in Spain, was denied entrance, and committed suicide that night. The next morning, the party of refugees he was with was given permission to enter. I have recently completed my 3rd volume of letters to Octavio Paz, the deceased Mexican poet and Nobel Prize winner for literature. Octavio and I are fast friends. I try to read as much as I can of everything these people have written to better understand the content and context of their own time and place, and their perspectives concerning aesthetics within the cultural and historical placement of their lives. While corresponding with these distinguished dead people, I use their commentary to react and integrate their views with the existential issues of my own existence. I'm not odd, damn it. The first dead person I wrote to was William Morris. Bill, I call him, we call him Mr. Morris. I wrote 35 or 40 long letters, many over 25 pages. I am a disciple of William Morris. I named my dog my golden retriever Morris. In his honor, I have William Morris wallpaper in just about every room of the house. I wanted Judy to change her name to Morris, but she refused. Now, I'm getting into a rather delicate manner. I feel quite exposed, so to speak, but Gareth made a cruel reference to the meager dimensions of my manhood in his introductory comments regarding my relationship to Morris, the arts and crafts leader, not the dog. Here I feel compelled to explain this painful humiliation. About the time I was writing to William, I was receiving constant email messages from 2 strangers named Renee and Naomi, who insisted I needed something they called male enhancement. First of all, in attempting to review all of my past sexual conquests in the last 50 years or so, alas, a brief review in time span, I do not remember intimate contact with any woman called Renee or Naomi. Secondly, how did they find out about the modest dimensions of my member? In Glendora, which is where I live, which is a quite respectable American suburb where no one has ever been naked, I could not conduct a comparative survey. And it has been a very long time since I cohabited a locker room with other males. You can see what a quandary I was in. Were Renee and Naomi indeed sincere and honest in their efforts to remedy this particular shortcoming of mine? Well, I wrote to William about the whole thing, knowing his problems with his wife Jane and that bastard Bootleg. I assumed that William, in fact, might require similar services. William, in his embarrassment, never responded, and I remain in desperate need of that treatment ever since. I must refrain in future comments tonight to return to the subject, although much of my life has been centered there. After I wrote this long letter to Gareth, much to my surprise, he had the audacity, the upstart pup, to write an equally long letter back. Now, it was not only a long letter, it was very articulate, a very compelling letter. This countercharge of rather elaborate and elegant text that revealed talents beyond the potter's wheel. I can only charge it with failing to defer to my seniority in age and my elevated status of professor emerit. Out of my glorious letter and Gareth's impertinent one, we then extracted passages and organized them by theme and issue into the two-hander lecture that you are about to see. We presented our performances at various venues, admittedly off-Broadway productions, but still to rave reviews. Our last presentations in Philadelphia and Manhattan were in conjunction with an exhibition of Gareth's work at the Jason Jock Gallery in New York and the publication of a book of marvelous images of Gareth's marvelous works that included the text of his sofa speech, his lecture, our two letters, and the excerpts that that contain our text for this script. The title of the book, More is More, is Gareth's quote, and it summarizes in condensed form his aesthetic attitude that inspires his current creative impulses. So the passages we are going to use tonight are bits and pieces. It's all that cheap whiskey over the years. I'll be fine. We have at least 4 hours of materials, and given the right encouragement from you, we could be well persuaded to offer you the entire text this evening.
We haven't got that much time.
I fully approve about Gareth's comments about words in his introduction. I have found in my working with the visually talented in art and craft, probably most of you, they are too often quite conventional in what they perceive are the value and use of the word. The normal habit in the arts is that words are used as handmaidens of the artifact, most commonly employed in an exhibition catalog, where they are merely descriptive and explanatory servants of the image and the object. I have attempted, as curator and writer, to urge an equal partnership of artifact and text. This partnership involves and integrates the total experience, creatively interpreting the engagement of the artifact and the resulting meaning of that contact, and then to position it in a cultural context. This evening will be a demonstration of that view. So the odd couple has arrived this evening, now seasoned veterans of stage and screen, to present you with our call and response performance. Gareth and I had a unique conversation in which the voice of the collector and the maker often collide and sometimes coalesce around those issues that not only govern our creative work, but reveal our absurdities, our fallibilities, and the most noble aspirations of our very existence. Now, the first issue. How can we reconcile the rights and relationship of those three separate entities, the maker, the work, and the viewer? You talk about the capacity of fire to cleanse, of sensitizing our need to be free, of the power of an infinite potential for resurgence, of the potential profit of the aesthetic ordeal you are asking us to endure. Do you think you are expanding or limiting your potential evidence with such talk and such work? What are the benefits for us to undergo the ordeal you are asking us to endure? Your words are not indifferent, and your work is not indifferent. What do you think are the rights of those who engage your work? Are they not equal in their liberties and ability to establish their own standards and conditions in which they will either accept or deny you and your work? I am delighted to find that you cede authority to viewers and realize and appear to appreciate their investment of energy and time. I also find complete agreement with you that once you create the artifact, it gains its own autonomous existence. It is something most of us have experienced with our own children, those inherently ungrateful little ones that we once lavished with such tender care, who regardless decided to grow up and leave us to make lives of their own. The artifact cannot remain the artist's property, and it too must go its own way. I will go further and declare that not only must the artist relinquish the physical object, but the very meaning they have attached to it. If I read another one of those damn artist manifestos, I'm going to puke. Their official version of what it means as an aesthetic statement and experience cannot be embedded in the artifact or prescribed in a manifesto statement that others will receive and accept whole. Besides, if you hold the attitude, as many contemporary ceramic artists do, that you are overthrowing centuries of ceramic tradition in your work, why can't contemporary observers adopt the same attitude and decide to overthrow your work and go on to the very newest, trendy, new thing? Some consumers of art and literature assume they will know the artist or author when they know the work or read the book. I don't think so. The maker, the work, and the viewer all have independent, autonomous existences within the space that exists between them. Whatever is disclosed by contact and exposed by engagement still leaves mysterious and incomplete what the viewer needs to fill with their own resources, independent of the maker and the artifact. Like Blanche in Tennessee Williams' play, A Streetcar Named Desire, both artists and viewers must ultimately depend on the kindness of strangers.
So how can we reconcile the rights and relationships of the three separate entities of the maker, the work, and the viewer? Ordeal or no ordeal? Should the viewer's efforts to engage any given artwork necessitate an aesthetic ordeal for them? Well, why the hell not? But the artist's aesthetically courageous or even reckless choices need not necessarily be causally linked to the viewer's experience of an ordeal. Remember, the viewer brings a lot to their own experience of a given work, all by themselves, and their ordeal can often say a great deal more about them and their aesthetic parameters than about the artwork itself. Now, the love triangle between artist, artwork, and viewer is an infinitely nuanced one. But damn it, Richard, the world would be a pretty vapid place if everything was reduced to some utilitarian common denominator or to some conception that there was no other use to any art object than decoration. I have to believe that there is an appetite out there for the kind of work that I want to make. I want to believe, I have to believe, that there's a constituency of people out there who, like me, are extremely demanding of the work from which they seek fuel. They look hard They expect their investment to be rewarded. This belief just helps me get through the night. Now, of course, I cede the liberty to take or leave my efforts to the one engaging the work. I have no choice. I absolutely respect individuals' rights to, as you say, establish their own standards of engagement and conditions thereof. I expect no less, because who on earth could possibly be the arbiter otherwise? Certainly not me. And of course, some will be turned off by what I do. I've got no desire to please all the people all the time. I had a period a while ago where the work I produced had little substance, because it stemmed from a misplaced sense of a style that I felt suited me, that I thought would sell, that I thought would please more people. The work was restrained, emotionally cool, clean-lined, contemporary-looking, technically very proficient. Some of it sold. It was promising. I had some very high-profile endorsement. But the mantle of minimal modernist was ill-fitting. I had to change it. It just didn't answer. It left me cold. So it was round about then that I began to dig in my heels and gun for more personal territory. It was a complete leap into the unknown, Richard. I didn't know what I was doing. I still don't know what I'm doing. Only that it had to be about committing to something other than what I know. That's all that I hope for from the people who encounter my work. Why does otherness frighten us so? What makes us resistant to that which does not concur with our immediate experience? What do we gain from that resistance? And I have no interest in overthrowing centuries of ceramic tradition. On the contrary, I'm happy for the centuries of ceramic tradition to be what they are, quite simply, and to stand proudly next to them. They simply exist, independently of my efforts, irrespective of whatever I do or say. Why should I possibly seek to overthrow them? I love them. I honor them. I am informed and nourished by them. That which has gone before me is part of my DNA. But galaxies of difference exist between them and me. I do not and will never lay any claim to them or assume any connection to them other than as a cherry picker, a voyeur, a shape thief. I am steadfastly a creature of my time.
The next topic. How does sensuality and sexuality experienced and expressed by the artist and the collector in their engagement with ceramics? As you can see from the title of this, we'll employ any desperate attention to strategy to maintain your attention.
We don't shirk the big issues.
We tend to associate passion with our genitalia. And indeed, animals of all sorts, including humans, are deemed to be in heat when sexually aroused. I concede that you would not probably describe your own condition while working on a ceramic piece in exactly that way. But you do say there is a fire within. If so, is that fire supplemented in more acceptable manipulations of clay? Or is the clay ultimately a very poor substitute for the flesh of another? I will be very disappointed if you keep this entire discussion about fire and emotions above the waist. Is not the core of inner creativity also the core of human sexuality? You do list various aspects of this primoral self, including Stone Age fellowship, the cooking of fresh killed meat, the defense of camp, and finally, a family from life-threatening predators, and the need for warmth and comfort. But you stop short of the sensuous and the sexual. Perhaps, since this was originally written for a particular American audience in mind, you thought such erotic commentary could be potentially offensive, given our Americans' notorious reputation in Europe and elsewhere for puritanical and prudish propensities. I have long heard poets and others talk metaphorically about fires in the groin and fires in the belly, one talking about sexual passion and the others about worldly ambition. But exactly where is your fire located, Gareth? In this particular instance, I think you are being unduly wholesome and urge your primal passions to migrate southward. Metaphorically speaking, that is what we're talking about here, more fires are put out by the consummation of a sexual act than any action on our behalf by the local fire department.
I can migrate southward, brother. Do you want to test me? I'm a sensualist, out and proud. The senses, especially touch, are my principal means of communication. I engage bodily, and clay is a wanton recipient of touch.
You devil, you.
When I imagine the magic equation of material plus human sensual reasoning, the vibration that arises out of that encounter strikes me as akin to the chemistry that exists between people. Its power and its unpredictability is its strength, its attraction, its danger. Can an artwork have pheromones? Or cause the brain to flood with oxytocin like a lover's touch? The receptor for the pheromone is the imaginative capacity of my fellow beings. We experience and we project. Our projections color our experience. Now, to what extent is the yearning for the flesh of another a catalyst to the creative act? Sexual and romantic yearning has been a perennial fixation since the dawn of sentient thought. What better vehicle than art to tap into and express humanity's most fundamental driver? Yet, simulation through artistic media does not answer the yearning fully enough for me, and so it lingers. For all its sensory potency, clay is mute and cold and unfeeling. It is at best a mirror, a medium, a vehicle. Though I sometimes touch it like a lover, it can never be a fellow being. But sifting the sands of my inner life for a truthful counterfeit of all this feeling is a powerful motivational force. Artful illusions cannot wholly consummate the desire. The consequent unsated state perpetuates the search, hungering and sating and hungering anew, frustration, desire. I can no more expect to crystallize my ambition in any one work than to expect any one meal to satiate a lifetime's appetite. But to drill further into the ambiguous communicative potential of material, it's necessary to consider the qualities of material illusion in themselves. And it does not take much imagination to connect with some of the qualities that I celebrate in my work for their sexual correspondence. So allow me to list a few for you, Richard, and see if the word pictures have the desired effect for you. Clear gelatinous fluids ooze and drip from undulating lips. Glazes blush. Forms overlap and flow into one another. Vitrified softness endures. My fingers, palms, elbows, arms, chest, hip bones, all pinch and stroke, and dent and smear, squeeze, expand, intrude, and coax and pierce. Forms intertwine, they puncture, envelop one another. Skin of the clay is engorged, indented, folded, scalloped, compressed, stretched. The work is bathed, barred, and broken by my hands. Now all of the energetic traces of this symphony of touch are captured. Perhaps, perhaps they really do speak of a contact that would be more fitting in the light of another fire altogether than the one that we've been talking about, the fire of which you speak, the inner fire. I do believe that sexuality and creativity are closely akin. And this belief springs from no more authoritative a place than my own personal experience. I mentioned that my work emanates from a tender place. I called it a center of the being ache. Now that ache is so very close to the yearning that we train toward the objects of our loves and lusts in this life as to be almost indistinguishable. But, Richard, I have to be honest with you. My God, but clay is my nasty, filthy, glorious little harlot. On occasion.
How do the artist and collector engage with the idea of beauty? Who, besides you and a few of your artist friends, would find that sometimes beauty is the beast? Who would find that attractive for further contact and engagement on the part of the general public? Do you really want to reduce me to a puny self who shivers in the presence of the unknowable immensity of this other? Am I not puny enough, already just living and making it through the day in this gut-wrenching, blood-stained world? The very concept of beauty has been conflicted by modern notions, both in aesthetics and in the role and status of women. I see nothing in your expanded definition of beauty to include the sublime that would limit the involvement of women as equal partners. What exactly is the difference between pretty and beautiful? And does your preference for beauty only apply to aesthetics? I think most women would agree that being beautiful is more impressive than being pretty if we can push the meaning of the beautiful in a direction I think you would also favor. Has your own sense of the beautiful provided with a compelling inner power rather than the surface characteristics of merely being pretty? We must make room in beauty for the beast. And the name of that beast is the sublime. The question I have for you would reverse this equation. Have you left room, Gareth, for beauty in the beast? You imply that they are not two separate things coexisting in the same piece, but they become one thing in which this inner duality plays itself out. I am a cutting-edge radical here, talking about the social context of the artifact within our daily lives, urging you to look at your pottery as a sensual extension of your sexuality, and refusing to accept a universal or absolute definition of what constitutes art or beauty. It's all there in this letter here. I can now join your postmodern company and feel at home in a world I never made.
Ah, damn it, Richard. I know that most of your questions are rhetorical, but I've just got to take this one on. Have I ever left the room for Beauty in the Beast? Yes, many times. And the same is true of the Beast in Beauty. So, what do I mean exactly? Beauty in the Beast refers to works that are ostensibly dark, hard-edged, confrontational, but that contain unaccountably moving or stirring qualities. They reach out and arrest you in spite of their uncompromising complexion. Now, the Beast in Beauty concerns works that are ostensibly consonant and harmonious, apparently glad on the eye, but which embrace darkness. They possess soundings of an unsavory nature, and they belie their apparent symmetry and perfection. Now, this begs a question, and I can sense it on your lips. Where on this spectrum do I place myself? Well, I will take and use both as I see fit, because I recognize both within me, and both require equal rights to a voice. Now, I appropriate the word beauty consciously. I use it in full knowledge of the pigeonhole of feminine loveliness accepted and utilized by both sexes, which you entertain in your letter, and to which it is ascribed ad nauseum in so many aspects of life and society. This definition of amplified prettiness, far from restricting me, actually gives me wriggle room. It licenses me to indulge in qualities that perhaps undermine this limiting notion a little. I refuse to conceptually cordon this word. Interestingly, though it is a massive engine of international commerce, just look at the fashion and cosmetics industries. And hugely important in design, Aston Martin, Apple. The word beauty is not favored at all in contemporary arts discourse. In conceptual art circles, it is anathema. Now, this is a red rag to a bull for me. It reassures me that my values are indeed out of step with those championed by the gatekeepers of taste in contemporary art, which in turn helps confirm my identification of myself as an outsider, and it encourages me to use this word as a badge of my pariah status. I know, I'm perverse. Now, you use the word sublime, and you christen the word beast with it, and I like that. One may experience a sublime agony or ecstasy. Though sublime is a truly excellent word, I remain wary of it. To declare the sublime as an aesthetic goal would be, to say the least, a very tricky ambition to credibly articulate. It is, after all, allegedly a state beyond any conscious accounting. Here be dragons of unconscionable bathos, which threaten to bring the whole steaming, teetering edifice crashing down in a heap of pretension. Beauty and the sublime are both conceptual landmines. Now, I choose of the two to approach the slippery ideals that they typify through the comparatively surer ground of beauty, where I can create a more down-to-earth brand of mischief, and I can be both truthful and disrespectful concurrently. Technique, or even virtuosity, is hugely important. So don't get me wrong on that point. But neither technique nor virtuosity necessarily delivers beauty. Technical prowess is pretty. Pretty is part of me, but only part. Pretty is the base camp on the vertiginous ascent to beauty.
What are the aesthetic and intellectual benefits of doubt and uncertainty? I cannot recall the moment that I cannot recall at the moment who said that knowledge is power. I have never liked that idea. That compelling, iconic symbol or insight, once possessed, does not make you more powerful, but leaves you in the state you describe as mysteries that pierce our civility, render our achievements paltry, cow us, humble us to the core, and inspire us. For most people, that moment of revelation, when one's faith and faith is sealed with a message from a god or guru, completes oneself, and one becomes saved by a single religious belief, political ideology, or philosophy. In this case, the triumphal celebration ends the mystery, brings closure to the doubt, and removes the uncertainty. Most people assume this is what education and learning is all about. I think they're quite wrong. And from the tenor of your remarks, I think it is possible you might agree with me here. What I expect from a memorable intellectual or aesthetic experience is for it to do serious injury to what I previously believed, to subvert what I thought I knew, to destabilize the very presuppositions that I formerly believed, to subvert what I thought, to gut the very givens that have provided previous structure to my existence and world. For me, the sublime and profound significance of a complex doubt and informed in uncertainty forms the highest possible attainment of human wisdom. Given my progress so far, I would hope by the end of my days to know nothing at all for sure. This result will surely have made my lifetime as a learner worthwhile.
If we filter out everything that conflicts with our beliefs and only admit that which harmonizes, we end up with ever more entrenched and erroneous illusions of certainty. Any system of thought, Richard, that purports to offer absolute answers is, to my mind, profoundly flawed at best and at worst, dangerous. You mention a complex doubt and informed uncertainty as a definition of wisdom, and it strikes me that way too. It coins my approach to my work, although I hesitate to position myself as wise. But I want my doubt to be as complex as I can make it. And I want my uncertainty to be colored by an unfettered sense of possibility. For me, to be so out and proud about my doubt, it seems suicidal. Who is persuaded in any way by uncertainty? Were I a doctor, or a politician, or a businessman, I would be pilloried. Perhaps the arts are the only platform in society from which that nebulous assertion has any hope of persuasive weight. Now, how can I ever see what is possible, Richard, if I merely keep out rattling what I already know? Mine's a pretty intense form of integration, of reimagining, of discovery. And this discovery element, it involves alighting upon moments of revelation as they occur, and simply giving them space. And when I say this, I'm referring to physical moments. And crucially, my responses to them, my responses to material through fire or through my hands. And I'm also referring to the stages of intervention that I engage in along the way, each in itself an act of composition. I experience these moments so vividly. I want them to endure, but their nature is inherently transient, which is as it should be. If I fuse them most successfully when, rather than grasping at them, I simply allow them their own space, their own voice. When this happens, it feels as though I've appropriated their voice and augmented my own voice in turn. Now, I'm referring in all of this to my interesting, unusual, quirky relationship with control. It's about indulging instinct. It's about letting go. This is all a foil to inhibition, of course, but working this way is also a playground for doubt. My latent attachment to knowing is an ever-present dragging anchor. So I decided some time ago to value doubt, to consider it a friend, to consider it an asset. When operating from the perspective of doubt, the results can never be seen as an all-encompassing axiom. The ego can never be massaged. The temptation to lord it over one's fellow beings through intellectual sleight of hand is banished. And hopefully, that rarest of qualities, integrity, becomes slightly more attainable. Oh God, what now?
How do you locate and engage the extraordinary in the ordinary? Why aren't you embarrassed, Gareth, to talk about such things? Why would a mature man in today's world discuss a lingering, transcendent moment, the echo of which remains with us even for life? I do not want art to be a special event. As I said in my very first letter to Krista Assad many years ago, the engagement of an artifact with human sensibility is a pedestrian and ordinary event. I wash the dishes, take out the trash, and engage my pottery. They are all necessary actions and behavior to maintain my life and sanity. I would not only claim that the reception or experience of an aesthetic event takes place within our ordinary and commonplace world, but that the creation of the artwork takes place as well in the ordinary and pedestrian life of the maker. I assume there are no trumpets announcing the beginning of your day, Gareth. No symphonic crescendo announces the opening of a kiln. You do not retreat to Mount Olympus for special instructions, or even the left bank of Paris for inspiration to conjure up your creation. Like most studio spaces, I'm sure your own must be disorderly and messy. I can't imagine that your own appearance is presentable in respectable company, given that your clothes are constantly smeared and soiled with clay. I am sure you must take a break occasionally from wrestling with that soggy clay to eat or take a pee. I do not say anything here in derision of the creative act or its results. I simply reiterate that it is in the ordinary that we find the extraordinary. In all of this, I'm trying to make accessible to the greatest number of people what some people want to keep isolated for a precious few. The very idea of what culture means does not represent a private club or an exclusive membership, but rather extends to entire populations as fully qualified recipients and participants. It is tragic that too few are motivated to do so or are prevented by the lack of opportunities and circumstances beyond their control.
In much contemporary art, it seems that to shock is more deserving of critical approbation than to seek to transport. Perhaps again, that wayward kink, that rebellious anti-zeitgeist aspect of my personality drives me to champion precepts that run contrary to the norm, or at least to pig-headedly assert my right to negotiate my own path. This is why I can blatantly declare that I love the notion of the lingering transcendent moment. I believe we're all capable of experiencing it. Are we made of stone? Even the most jaded and cynical of critics still want their hearts stolen away. Aesthetic engagement need not be some rarefied activity. Transcendence is attainable through the everyday. Moments of heightened inner correspondence, be they with the environment, with an artwork, a piece of your work in your pottery gallery, or a passing glint in the eye of a stranger, perhaps an undiscovered soulmate. Its attainment is dependent upon the eyes through which we choose to engage the world. Ultimately, we see what we want to see. Our predispositions are powerful filters. I reserve the right to continually push at the edges of my own predispositions. I'm truly sculpting smoke, I know, but the transmutation of material to emotional stimulation is a constant source of wonder to me. Childlike, simple, complex, delicious, evocative, melancholic, joyful wonder. Art takes place somewhere between self and other. Negotiating these distinct spaces, self, other, the everyday, it's not always a fluent or necessarily a pleasant task. It's natural that it should be this way. I wouldn't want it to be otherwise. Now, you spoke of your need to engage your collection, and I dare say the doubtless many hours of every day that you commit to your writing and to your reading, it's a lifestyle after all, as an act commensurate with everyday life, an everyday experience. It's not a rarefied activity. You're right. I do not retreat to Mount Olympus for special instructions or the left bank of Paris for inspiration, much as I love the image of me swanning up Mount Olympus in a toga and a laurel with my flaxen locks wafting in the warm Grecian breeze in an attitude of rapt expectancy for the enlightenment that surely awaits me at the summit. Damn it, Richard. The reality is more like stomping to the supermarket in the pissing rain. or renewing car insurance online. It's like changing the fucking toilet seat sometimes, for Christ's sake. Now I'm driven to engage in a host of mechanical and everyday acts, and I have to trust them every time, because they invariably, eventually, coalesce into completed works. Magic can engage from workman-like engagement. The graft can bear transcendent fruit. The idea of transcendence shimmers tantalizingly. It permeates this conundrum for me. But I'm foundering now. I can't pin it down. I get glimpses. Perhaps the glimpses are enough, and I needs must let them pass, undescribed, and smile in the knowledge that I've been close, and maybe I'll be close again.
Artists have a reputation for their bootleg behavior. Should the nature of the work match that of the individual? I don't think it's fair that artists are allowed to wander and dream and just do just about any other damn thing they want to do, because we all know that artists are weird and unstable, so it doesn't matter. For respectable bourgeoisie like me, artists have always been cultural celebrities, and their antics and death-defying excesses constitute a dependable entertainment, safely distant from our own humdrum and predictable lives. Gareth, are you aware of the company you keep? They once called types like you bohemian, then later the lost generation, and after that I think the beatniks, and then later the hippies. I might have left out a few labels of the historical stages of generations of degenerative artists. I haven't kept track of these things nowadays, so I don't know what they call people like you now. Today, I think rock and roll performers are expected to perform the spectacular feats of self-destruction that the Romantic period of the 19th century in Europe expected of the dissipated artist or poet. Where are you in this noble tradition? Does your breaking of aesthetic taboos and traditions in ceramics, where I think you rightly deserve credit, emanate from a general violation of the taboos of society? However outrageous your performance as a ceramic bad boy and postmodern cultural outlaw, I know you as a devoted family man, a loving father and husband, and really quite normal in many essential ways. I do hope you will forgive me for this disclosure. It could very well ruin your reputation and drastically affect your career.
Societal taboos. Interesting territory, this. Does my broad bandwidth of acceptable experience in the field of material alchemy extend beyond those rarefied borders to society at large? Richard, damn it, again. Do you not think what I do with ceramics is enough of a headfuck for me? You cite some noble traditions of societal disobedience there. Every age and generation has its dissidents, it has its non-adherents, but I do not count myself among their number, much as I admire their courage in a way. I could not endure the psychological damage of such a feckless existence, nor could I submit my children to the horrors of a dissolute father. I confess my iconoclastic bent freely, but I'm content to contain it to the artistic realm. Now, I just said content. You didn't actually ask me if I'm content, so I'm not going to go there right now. But I also admit to a gentle provocation in my work, in public speaking. I say gentle. I don't set out to offend anybody. I don't argue. I never get angry, very rarely. But I do believe a well-placed cuss is a profoundly gratifying thing. In polite company, it can be a wonderfully mischievous act. And I've let that tendency out to play selectively in these pages. I'm not a hothead, but I'm no stranger to passion. And I will engage feverishly when the occasion demands it. I'm not really sure I know what bohemian means, in truth. It's such a hackneyed phrase that it's almost meaningless nowadays. It feels like it describes the people who flip the bird at societal norms and they proceed through their lives as chaff in the wind, merely driven to satisfy their own contraband feelings and living to no other creed but their own. They burn very brightly and they are quickly extinguished, and they often leave quite a legacy. Does what I've been saying sound like it emanates from a soul such as that? Am I truly a being of Byron-esque propensities, Richard? You know what? I'm going to let you arrive at your own conclusions. But thankfully, in the arena of my work, on its current experiential trajectory anyhow, I find that there's more than enough material there to keep any latent restlessness in my psyche occupied. Rest assured, if it should come to pass that my work no longer adequately vents any iniquitous inner life, then I'll be sure to get shit-faced loaded. And I'll come round to your house with a brace of comely whores, one boy and one girl. And we'll drink all your scotch. And we'll fornicate vigorously in your lounge. And then, railing at my demons, I'll throw your television out of the window. Now, until that happy day, I'll confine my excesses, any problems in my troubled psyche, to the relatively harmless arena of the workshop. And there, along with the vehicle of white mud, which I torture, as you put it, there, I'm less likely to get arrested.
You have been really quite civilized in your attention to our antics. I have a propensity to want to do one or two encores because there's some good stuff we won't give you. Maybe that's just my inherent generosity of nature. But also, I realize that you would have certainly an attention span far greater than a butterfly. But I won't even try to compare you to some other animal. I'll only get in trouble. But we have a very brief closure, and I do want a discussion and feedback. We've been working our asses off. We deserve a little feedback, for God's sake. But maybe just one more. One more. And I'm looking at the faces of things.
I don't see anyone running from the room. So.
What is the relationship between control and chance in the creative process? I realize that what you do on the wheel and elsewhere must be calculated, and in that sense cannot be a total surprise. Your pieces do not look like they conform to the exactitudes of a pre-planned design. How much of that process do you fully control, and how much is left to chance? Surely you cannot be a control freak and get what you get in the result. How can you claim credit for what is unexpected in the result? Does what you cause creative chaos or not? If the ceramic work that emerges from the kiln surprises you, is that defiance or a triumph for you? Do you support wonder in all cases except in your own work? Are you in complete charge or not? couldn't this wonder business become an attempt to avoid or evade the hard work and years of effort necessary to achieve the mastery of the media? Do you still remember how to make a proper pot? What would you think of young people going in ceramics today, admiring both your work and its worldly success, and they decide to skip the achievement of the mastery of the media and produce their own pieces of instant wonder for the lucrative marketplace? Can you make good stuff without skill? Damn it, Gareth, I would hope you'd get your priorities right and drop whatever you're doing now and answer these questions.
I did.
While confronting my endless parade of questions, please keep in mind I'm just a humble pottery collector. I suspect that most makers have a natural contempt for the naivete and innocence of most collectors, except perhaps those few who have demonstrated good judgment by buying their work.
Am I in charge? Yes, Richard, absolutely. Though perhaps not completely. Because my results are not wholly the outcome of control. I may, as I say in the fire text, court the allegiance of other forces. Fire, of course, and gravity in particular. But it's I who calls the shots. Irrespective of what my dalliance with material anarchy throws back at me, I remain judge and jury, and sometimes I've got to be executioner. So naturally, my support of wonder applies in all cases, especially my work. It's that very dalliance that enables the genie of wonder to emerge, to surprise me. Occasionally it shocks me. Sometimes it beats me up pretty brutally. I regard my capacity to register material behavior in so visceral and so personal a manner as an affirming and motivating force. Pleasure and pain. It's a relationship. It's a drug. Creative chaos. That's an interesting phrase. I do not believe that I create that. Rather, I carefully orchestrate the effects of potentially chaotic forces. And it's in this act of orchestration that I make my presence felt. And it is here that the outcomes become ultimately and incontestably mine. Now you ask if I can still make a proper pot. And I love both the question and your mischievously provocative use of the word proper. Easy, tiger. Now this begs a question. What is proper? My work is profoundly proper to me. But I know the sense in which you mean it. Orthodox, acceptable, safe. Of course I can make proper work. You know, I spent 3 years as a production potter. I know about repetition, I know about graft, I know about the literally painful process of acquiring skill, and I now have a facility with the potter's wheel that would enable me to, with application, make pretty much whatever on earth I wanted to make. So why do I do what I do with clay? What could possibly induce me to abandon all of that skill? I make cracked, broken things, limping, corrupted things, damaged things. My work is walking wounded, rent open, bleeding. On occasion, it's pretty damned ugly. Yet, like a freak show or a car wreck, we can't resist gawping. It's strangely captivating. I've seen people rubbernecking, doing a double take as they walk by my work. So why do I do this? It's the aesthetic pervert in me. It revels in appealing to the earthy side of human nature. It revels in distorting other people's perceptions. Now, it's my belief in the powerfully elusive quality of materials and colors, as I've said elsewhere, that sanctions this belief for me. All this deviant behavior fits in with my desire to be in a place of unease, to create disturbing things. I insist there is great beauty to be discerned in this curious backwater of materiality that I have laid claim to.
Concluding thoughts of American ceramic collector and English ceramic artist amid great mutual respect and much affection.
Yeah, right.
The beating heart of your practice is also the beating heart of much of human mythology and culture. As with some others I have quoted who have sought truth and wisdom in what they do, you too have found optimism through placing yourself in risk and uncertainty. Gareth, you do not only experiment with clay, but it is evident that your very life represents an ongoing experience, a search for an operational truth and a tentative wisdom in an unsafe world. You provide us with the results that emerge from your struggle. That is, of course, what artists are supposed to do. This has always been the unreasonable demand the rest of us have made of artists. It is evident to me that you make even greater demands of yourself than any one of us could ask of you.
Part of my motivation in composing this letter to you, Richard, is a belief that more artists should commit in this way. The academic detachment of the base theoretician should be more frequently enlightened with testimony from the lofty heights of the coalface. Now, have I redressed the imbalance as I perceive it in writing this? In truth, I rather doubt it. But I offer you my thanks for spurring me. You state in your text, memorable learning requires an experience. I'm not sure I'm any wiser as a result of this experience. I don't actually feel I've got any better understanding of my own work. In fact, I'm not at all sure what I've come out of this with, except, perhaps, a quiet desire that in committing as candidly as I have to the written word, the personal will become, if not universal, then simply accessible. That I will have laid down the reality of creative experience in a snapshot of time from the perspective of one skinny Englishman. Thank you very much for your attention.